Welcome to Summer Reading. I'm Miss Julie, and our book kit this week is The Chocolate Touch. But in order to understand the book, we need a little background. I hope you have heard of King Midas and the Golden Touch, because that goes along with this summer's theme of Tales and Tales. So King Midas loved gold. He just loved his gold. And he had a daughter, and she loved to go out into the garden every morning and smell the flowers. Well, one day a stranger came into the garden, and the king's guards came and said, "What should we do with him? Should we throw him in the dungeon?" And the king said, no, if I didn't have my gold, that could have been me. So he invited him to have dinner with him and treated him wonderfully. A few days later, a stranger appeared, and he said, "I will grant you a wish. What would you like your wish to be?" And King Midas said he wished that everything he touched would turn to gold. And the stranger said, "Are you sure?" And King Midas said, "Oh, of course, of course." So he got up the next morning, and the first thing he touched was his bed, and it had turned to gold. And he went down the stairs, and they turned to gold. And his daughter, who usually went out in the garden every morning, she went out and touched the flowers, and they had turned to gold. And she came to her father, and she was so sad and said, "The flowers are all gold. I'm so sad." And King Midas said, "Oh, it'll be all right." But she continued to cry, and they couldn't console each other. And she came over and touched King Midas. And you know what happened? The little girl, his daughter, turned to gold. Everyone was sad. King Midas didn't know what to do. And he called upon the stranger, who, if you haven't figured out, was the man in the garden, to tell him what to do. And the stranger said, "Go to the far ends of the kingdom, and there you can drink the water, and your spell will be over." And that is what happened. And King Midas then and his daughter lived happily ever after. So you needed to know the King Midas story in order to appreciate this week's book, The Chocolate Touch. And I'm going to read a little bit of it, and if you haven't heard it, maybe you'll want to be sure and stop by and get the book and read it. And if you have heard it, come on in and get a book, and it can be yours forever and ever. The story starts, the character, the little boy's name is John Midas. Catch that? Midas. Chapter 1. Most of the time, John Midas was a very nice boy. Every now and then, of course, he broke a rule, such as the rule against pretending to be a tiger when his sister Mary was supposed to be going to sleep. Generally speaking, however, he behaved very well. He should have behaved better. He lived in a comfortable house surrounded by a green lawn and widespread shade trees that were suitable for climbing. His mother was gentle as well as practical. His father, when he didn't have to hurry to town, spent hours telling John interesting things about baseball, beetles, birds' nests, boats, and butterflies. John went to school and liked it. His teacher, Miss Plimsoll, was fairly easy to get along with, as long as he did careful work. Isn't that the way it is with all teachers? They're easy to get along with if you do what they tell you. He received a new, shiny golden trumpet and music lessons as a going-to-school present. Mrs. Quaver, the music teacher, had soon agreed to let him play small parts, a few notes at a time, with the school orchestra. Now, this book has a few line drawings, and as you can see, I've already read 2 pages. The print is fairly large and will be easy for you to read. Finally, there was Susan Buttercup, who was in his class. Susan had soft yellow curls, round pink cheeks, blue eyes, and one of the best collection of marbles in the neighborhood. John should have been completely well behaved, but he wasn't. He had one bad fault. He was a pig about candy. Boiled candy, cotton candy, licorice of all sorts, old-fashioned toffee, candied orange and lemon slices, Cracker Jack, jelly beans, fudge, blackcurrant lozenges for ticklish throats, acid drops, peppermint sticks, lollipops, marshmallows, and above all, can you guess? Chocolates. He devoured them all. While other boys and girls spent their money on model airplanes, magazines, skipping ropes, and pet lizards, John studied the candy counters. All his money went to candy, and all his candy went to himself. He never shared it. John Midas was candy mad. I think King Midas didn't share his gold either. He just liked counting his gold. At lunch one Saturday, Mrs. Midas noticed a couple little red spots on the end of John's nose. "Look," she said to Mr. Midas, "John has spots." Mr. Midas leaned forward to look at them. He gravely shook his head and clicked his tongue. "John tried to look, but it was very difficult to see the end of your own nose without a mirror, unless you happen to be an elephant, with a long nose that you can bend double. When John tried to look at the end of his nose, first with one eye, can you do that? And then the other, and then with both of them together, all that he could see was a pink blur. Besides, trying to look at something so close made his eyes ache." "I can't see any spots, Mother," John said. "Well, I can," Mr. Midas said. "Just because you don't see a thing doesn't mean it isn't there. Try feeling the end of your nose with your finger." John rubbed his finger over the tip of his nose. It did feel a bit rough. "It may be the measles," Mrs. Midas said anxiously. She placed her hand on John's forehead to feel whether he was warmer than usual. "I don't think he's got a temperature." "I suspect John has been eating too much candy again," Mr. Midas said. "Have you been eating candy this morning, John?" Some," John admitted. "What?" Mr. Midas asked. "Well, I had a few cream delights. Susan gave them to me." "Anything else?" "A little toffee crunch," John said. "And what else?" Mr. Midas asked, beginning to look cross. John's ears grew red. He knew he wasn't supposed to eat candy before meals. Hardly anything else." "John," Mr. Midas said, and his son recognized the tone. It meant John had better tell everything. It turned out that John had been around to see most of his friends and had managed to get candy from nearly all of them. The list he recited was a long one. "And no wonder you have spots," Mr. Midas commented at last. "I think we better take John to see Dr. Cranium," he said to Mrs. Midas. So, you see, John has eaten too much chocolate, and I wonder what will happen. The title is The Chocolate Touch. So not only when you come to the library do you get this book, but you will get a kit, and guess what's in it? A chocolate bar, and the makings to make your own some more at home. So we hope you come to the library this week, get your kit and your free book, and enjoy